from the last frames of the F-35 being hit by the Iranian Air Defense, it looks like some of the shrapnel got into the air intake and damaged the engine, but the airframe looked largely intact. So that plume of fire from behind the jet would indicate that there was some sort of damage to the air intake and the engine was damaged. So is that F-35 operable? Did it limp into whatever airbase it flew to? If it did make it to an airbase, I would say it's probably inoperable. The fact that Iran's air defense was able to detect, track, lock onto, and shoot and damage an F-35 is what matters most. Of course, it's noteworthy. Of course, it's extremely noteworthy that this is the first time in history that a U.S. fifth-generation F-35 was hit in combat. I want you all to mark this date in your calendars, March 19th of 2026, because it is now the first day in history in which a fifth-generation U.S. F-35 fighter jet was struck in a combat operation. Now, there's a lot of reasons why this is incredible, why this is noteworthy, and why it is particularly damning for the U.S. in this ongoing conflict. We're going to jump into all of that. I first want to show you, though, what Donald Trump had to say just a few hours ago. He was speaking in a press conference with the Japanese Prime Minister, Ms. Takachi, and he said, Iran's air defenses are gone. No one is even shooting at us anymore. Moments later, we got the news. CENTCOM confirmed that a U.S. fighter jet was struck flying over Iran with a pilot reportedly injured. So take a look at this. Oh, let me share the audio.
Their anti-aircraft equipment is gone. We're flying wherever we want. We have nobody even shooting at us.
No one's even shooting at us. No one's even shooting at us. Wow. Yeah, no, I think someone's shooting at you. I think you just got an F-35 clapped over Iranian skies. How about that? How about that? Wow, Tom, thank you so much for the generous super chat. I don't know why it didn't show up on the screen, but thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Free Iran, Palestina from the U.S. and the Zionists. Yes. Thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate it. So yes, today is a day for the history books. So much for the world's most advanced aircraft. That's what they called the F-35, the most advanced aircraft in the world. I guess not so much. Not so much because, you know, we've been told for so long that the Iranians are like, again, I repeat this phrase, but it's true. Like, if you listen to the mainstream media, if you listen to the Trump administration up until this week, because Trump is saying some things about the Iranians that are actually true, saying that they're very high IQ people, and this is a big chess game, and they're very high IQ talented players in this chess game. But no, I mean, they literally make the Iranians out to be knuckle-dragging barbarians living in caves with, like, no technology. They're living in the year 1000, and the U.S. can just go in there 3 days and the operation's going to be over. Well. I don't think that they expected that an F-35 was going to be hit in the middle of a combat operation. Now, militarily, this is extremely important. I want to remind you, in the 12-day war, we saw a lot of really bad things happening over Iran and in Iran. It's noteworthy that in this current conflict, the Ramadan War, as it's been referred to, or Epstein's Fury, we've seen no internal Mossad operations. Isn't that incredible? I mean, I figured there would be something. In the 12-day war, we saw every single day, we saw internal drone attacks, we saw internal chaos and bombs and Molotov cocktails and all this stuff going on each and every day. This war, we see nothing. Now that could change. No one should get too cocky about the fact that, like, there's been nothing yet, which means that Mossad will not be able to do something in the future. But what is a certainty is that after the 12-day war, Iran took a lot, and I mean a lot, of action against these networks. They deported millions of people that were likely targets for Mossad to try and pay off and do these sorts of things. Lots of poverty-stricken Afghan migrants. And they also, in the Mossad riots, which took place in the first week of January, they really, disrupted a lot of these networks. They intercepted a lot of Starlink transfers. They were able to target a lot of these groups and networks by way of shutting off the internet and then intercepting the Starlink feeds. And they also were able to intercept weapon shipments. So they imprisoned and they, neutralized hundreds of people who were responsible for those Mossad riots. And now, in the midst of this war, we've seen nothing. It is incredible. But another thing that's been very incredible to watch is that during the 12-day war, we saw all these reports claiming that there was air superiority or near air superiority over Iran. And I will say that it was pretty damn bad. The reason for that is because of the issue that I just mentioned. During the 12-day war, when these drone attacks were taking place and the sabotage was taking place inside the country, what were those drones being launched at? They were being launched at air defense systems within the suburban areas like in Tehran. Why were they hitting those? Because they knew that Iran, if they had to make a decision between sacrificing their air defense systems or putting them in the ground, that they would probably choose to put them back in the ground in safe storage, which is what the Iranian military did. They said, we don't want to sacrifice our air defenses. We're going to put them into storage. We can't stop these internal drone attacks right now. In the future, of course, we can. But we are just going to have to take this all on the chin. That's what they did during the 12-day war. And that's why there was so much air dominance by the Israelis during that conflict. This time around, you don't see it. But also this time around, we know that the Iranians have upped their game. The Russians, the Belarusians have provided a lot of new radar equipment, logistics, air defense systems. The Chinese are also helping as well. And we also know that the Iranians have even worked on developing their own air defense systems since the 12-day war. In fact, according to the Iranians, this F-35 jet, which was struck, but albeit not shot out of the sky, just today, was shot by a new Iranian air defense system that was produced after the 12-day war. So this is an updated system. Now, you look at this video here, and the first thing that you probably notice is that it cuts off like really abruptly after the plume takes place, after the explosion takes place. But you can see a trail of fire from the F-35 after there's some sort of a explosion. Okay. Now, some OSINT journalists online broke it down frame by frame, and it is a wild sequence. You can actually see the interceptor sit in on it, close the distance, the interceptor being right here. Then the blast booms around the target. So you can see the entire fighter jet is covered in this giant explosion. You can't see anything from the view of the tracker. And then afterward, you see the fire trail leaving behind on the F-35. But the F-35, you can still see in the top right, it's intact and it's flying away. So what does that mean? Well, CENTCOM has confessed that the Iranians successfully targeted and damaged an F-35 in Iranian airspace. They claim it made an emergency landing and the pilot is in stable condition, albeit was injured. My guess is, I don't know, but my guess is that the plane probably went to Saudi Arabia. Now, Iran released this very short clip of what they claim was the strike. The last frame of the clip clearly shows a plume of flame trailing behind the jet after the strike. That looks like a fatal wound to me. I'll bet CENTCOM is hiding the fact that the pilot had to eject and the plane was lost. Now, no one is claiming that the jet was shot down. They are claiming that it was hit. I have not seen the Iranians claim that it was shot down. And the Americans, of course, are not claiming it was shot down. This is from Chinese OSINT, great account to follow online. From the last frames of the F-35 being hit by the Iranian Air Defense, it looks like some of the shrapnel got into the air intake damage and damaged the engine. but the airframe looked largely intact. So that plume of fire from behind the jet would indicate that there was some sort of damage to the air intake and the engine was damaged. So is that F-35 operable? Did it limp into whatever airbase it flew to? If it did make it to an airbase, I would say it's probably, as a layman, as a person who doesn't know anything, it is currently probably inoperable. I would imagine that there needs to be significant repairs on that jet to get it airworthy once more, if that is even possible. But that's not the important thing here. The important point is that it's not whether it was shot down, it's whether that the U.S., the Israelis have the ability to fly in, over, or around Iranian airspace. So that's what they say here. The fact that Iran's air defense was able to detect, track, lock onto, and shoot and damage an F-35 is what matters most. Of course, it's noteworthy. Of course, it's extremely noteworthy that this is the first time in history that a U.S. fifth-generation F-35 was hit in combat. But what the Iranians care about, it's not necessarily whether or not it's downed. I mean, for propaganda purposes, that would obviously be ideal for the Iranians. But from a purely pragmatic point of view, what they care about is that they can protect their airspace, even from the most high-end, elite fighter jets that the world has to offer. This alone is a form of deterrence, forcing the U.S. to continue using expensive standoff munitions with their non-stealth aircraft and avoid using F-35 with impunity. Also worth noting, 10% of the U.S.'s MQ-9 Reaper drone fleet has been neutralized during this war, and that was the official number as of 2 days ago. We've seen more attacks on MQ-9s and other Israeli drones since this took place, but I mean, a whole 10% of the MQ-9 Reaper fleet has been annihilated by the Iranians thus far. It's actually incredible what their air defenses are doing. And it just goes to show that the 12-day war, I mean, the U.S. and the Israelis thought that this was going to be a cakewalk now. But the reason why they thought that is because of the high levels of Mossad attacks, which were taking place against the Iranian air defenses in the 12-day war, which forced them to put the air defenses into safekeeping to save for this war. Needless to say, this is not a cakewalk, and the U.S. is in for a very, very rude awakening each and every day. This continues to go on. Before you leave, I want to say thank you for the support, because after 2 years of being banned, we are finally back home on YouTube. So be sure to subscribe to our channel and also join as a member on our channel using the link at the top of the description. I rely on the generous support of viewers like yourself to get the truth out to as many people as possible. You can also support the show on Locals or Give Sin Go. The mainstream media and the powers that be are never going to stop attacking us for bringing the truth to as many people as we do. Thank you so much for your support.